In our administration, certainly the mayor and myself, we're a fervent believer. I think you are too, Richard, because we've had enough conversations about this, that Hawaii Island has really everything we need on this island, where we could function completely independently, from the world if we wanted to. I mean, we have a million acres of ag land, million acres. The potential for agriculture here, which includes aquaculture, enormous, unparalleled anywhere.
Welcome to Richard Haw's YouTube channel, which looks at what we can do today to make Hawaii Island a more sustainable place to live so our children and grandchildren and their grandchildren won't be priced out of here and will be able to stay in Hawaii and live good lives here. Today, we're talking to Benson Medina. Benson is the Director of Research and Development for the County of Hawaii. Welcome, Benson. It's so nice to see you.
Hi, Leslie. How are you? How's it, Richard?
Hey, how's it?
First, just briefly, will you tell us a quick overview of what your job is with the county? What is this position that you have?
Yeah, good, because there's a lot of people out there would probably want to know that, probably even people within the county. Research and development is basically the Office of Economic Development. We kind of line up a lot with what DBED does. So the scope of it is really we have agriculture, we have tourism, we have workforce development, we have economic development, we've got energy under us. We also have early childhood development, science and technology. Right now, we're working on a big project with broadband infrastructure, trying to help to increase broadband coverage on Hawaii Islands. Yeah, I forgot to tell you that the Film Commission is also under R&D. And then whatever the mayor's office would like us to do, yeah, we're busy down here.
That's amazing. That is all encompassing, isn't it? I'm stunned at
Crazy.
how many different things you cover.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So am I.
Benson, I'm wondering, energy. We've been advocating for geothermal, yeah. I was just wondering what your take is on geothermal and its possibilities for Hawaii.
Well, for Hawaii, it's enormous. It's also really huge, particularly for Hawaii Island, because of all of the islands in our chain. We probably have the most active geothermal resource of anyone. And as you know, we have a resource here that'll go a million years if we could just simply access it. And I think when you talk in terms of just growth, economic growth, the growth of our housing, affordable housing, our electricity, of course, is the most expensive on Hawaii Island in the entire nation. And so I see the advent of geothermal as something that is really key to the future of where our island goes, simply because I think our expansion, when we're talking about affordable housing, creation of jobs, is really tied into electricity to power. Because we have a resource like that, the exploration of that, I think, is essential. And the harnessing of that power, I can't think of anything that's more important right now. Now, I know that there's certain factions within our state government that are looking at hydrogen as a possible fuel source. But hydrogen at this point, it's a little too expensive to do it because it requires a high level of electricity to produce hydrogen, as you know. And so with the cost of our electricity, producing hydrogen with grid electricity is out of the question right now. But if we had a firm, sustainable source of electricity that was being produced by geothermal, now it makes sense. We can do now with battery storage a lot with solar, but not at the level we could do if we had geothermal.
Yeah, that's good to hear. When you're looking down a road,
Mhm.
like the Hawaiians look 7 generations from now, even if you just look 100 years from now, what could we do, and what is our responsibility actually as in my case, kupuna? What is my responsibility to advocate for something that'll be good for what we call Kyoke and Malia, yeah, or the group
Yeah.
of people that represent the youngsters? Yeah, that's very encouraging. And I see it exactly the way you described it. Hydrogen makes sense at some later point in the future when the electricity is stabilized because the fixed cost of geothermal is stable. Then, as time goes on and we get more of an advantage because of that, then hydrogen could be
I
a
think
solution.
I think you're correct, Richard, in having that longer term view. Part of my work experience is to work with, sustainable infrastructure. Now, unfortunately, government government tends to think in 4 and 8 year cycles,
Hmm.
which doesn't, in the long term, it doesn't really help us that much. However, I think in the current administration with Kimo Alameda as mayor, I think we're going to have a runway here where we're going to attempt, at least I know that people in our administration are looking at really trying to put infrastructure down so that we can start thinking more long term. The difficult part about government infrastructure, and I'm talking about, buildings, wastewater plants, water, it's all super expensive to put that in and then expensive to maintain it long term. But when you look at what's the highest costs that we have in government, it's the construction and the maintenance of that infrastructure. And so I think we have an opportunity now with the technology that we do have and creative ideas and certainly financing to be able to put some things in the ground now that we could look at building things that last 50 years or having that 100-year vision when you come in, because I think culturally, right, that's the way we think. So when I grew up, I thought kuleana meant chores because every time my dad would give me a chore, he would say it's your kuleana to clean the yard and it's your kuleana to wash the dishes. When I learned that it meant responsibility, but also it meant privilege, as I got older, I began to see that kuleana is really generational, right? And that every generation has kuleana responsibility to the following generations that are ahead of us, right? And so making those kinds of investments, creating that kind of policy that can set the next generation up, it's essential for us to do that right now.
That's great. I was going to ask you, you sort of alluded to this, but where does this all stand in government right now with geothermal and moving forward?
Well, I think our administration, because I've been in those meetings with the mayor, we're supportive of geothermal. When we take a look at our energy options going forward, I mean, obviously we're putting up solar or, PV like crazy. I mean, all you got to do is take a drive through Waikoloa and you can see how much is up there, and there's going to be more coming. But stable force of power that has the ability to go, hundreds, thousands of years. I mean, that's kind of what we're looking at. So, there are people, very vocal people on our island that are not for geothermal. That's okay, because part of government is that you have to try to figure out this common place where everybody can stand. But when we look at our options, I think geothermal right now stands out as probably the leading option, although geothermal infrastructure to put that in is very expensive. So our government, unfortunately, we don't have the resources to plunk down, $100 million, $200 million to get geothermal resource or infrastructure put in place. So, we have to make it appealing and viable for somebody to come in and invest that kind of money. The other thing that makes geothermal favorable to us is that it could also become a revenue stream depending on how our county government is involved in it. I've watched for years what geothermal has created for the Maori people in New Zealand, where geothermal companies came in and not only produced huge amounts of really clean power for people in New Zealand, the government was able to have a great source of revenue, as were the Maori people. And so depending upon where this resource gets harvested, it could become a great stream of revenue for our people where, that's challenging from the government budgeting side because we're used to just getting most of our revenue off of taxes. It'll be kind of nice to not have that.
Yeah. Are you saying if this was located on Hawaiian homelands, then it's something that one idea would be it could go back to Native Hawaiian people?
Sure, it could. I mean, that's a possibility. I mean, we're still at sort of that exploration point. We're still trying to find a source. I think going back to the Puna area is not viable right now. I think Ormat's already there and they're doing a good job and they want to try to expand. But I think if there is going to be a geothermal expansion, I think it's probably going to be on the west side.
Interesting.
I like what I hear. One thing that has not been considered, had not been talked about much, is the possibility of, like Pipikeo Point. If you look from Hilo, you can see the peaks of where volcano cones were. So there must be heat underneath there if we do some exploration. We don't have to do any drilling in today's technology, do some testing and see if it is viable. And the reason I bring that up is because on the Hilo Hamakua coast, there's at least 16 streams that originate from the Northeast Trades pushing up against Mauna Kea. So
Correct.
we're talking about free water,
Yeah.
so we get a combination possibly of the heat plus the water. The two things that is really very, very important, when you're talking about the future and stuff like that.
I think when you take a look at Hawaii Island in terms of availability of natural resource, we have the most of any island in the state. And so it's just a matter of like putting the fresh water together with the heat, accessing those resources in a way where it can be viable for us and economical as well.
Yeah, let's talk about food security.
Well, there's lots of ways to look at it. I mean, in terms of at its most simplistic form, right? Do people have the ability to feed themselves, grow their own food? On Hawaii Island, absolutely resounding yes. We have the space to do it. As a percentage, there's more people probably growing food on this island than any other island. We're kind of the ag capital of the entire state. But we still have issues we got to kind of deal with. Like everybody knows 90% of all of the food that's consumed in Hawaii, but yeah, maybe more, maybe it's 93 or 4% is shipped in. But when you look at our staple foods like, rice, taro, potatoes, all that kind of staples that we need to kind of survive, it's even higher. It's like 99% come in. And so we have to work or look at ways where we can make staple crops like kalo, like ulu, sweet potato, more affordable, where it can come in at the same level as like rice and potatoes, right? Somebody can go down to the store and buy a 5-pound bag of potatoes for like $3. But then if you get 5 pounds of kalo, it's like $20. We have to figure out a way to lower the cost of those kind of staple foods so that we can get them out into our population. Also, we have Nelha over here, right? And they're developing aquaculture out there. So they have, lobsters, abalone, they're doing fish farming. The amount of potential we have for aquaculture, it's like off the chart. We have the ability to grow stuff like seaweed, abundantly, bivalves of clams, oysters, all different kinds of fish. We can grow them already, but it's going to take investment, probably more than the government can invest to kind of expand that. Potentially on Hawaii Island, if you look at our potential to basically serve up a lot of food to our 207,000 residents, yeah, we have huge potential to do that. Our agriculture now at the federal level, we're experiencing, federal cuts. Obviously, we don't really like. So we're looking at other ways to finance economic development outside of government funding. Because we do have some philanthropic folks that live on this island that are very interested in supporting things that develop jobs, that develop food sources, develop energy sources. And so we're putting together, funding sources that can help us to develop some of these that are not government sourced.
I really like what you're saying here.
Yeah.
Because as a farmer, if the farmer makes money, the farmer going to farm. That's
Right.
basically what it is. So
Correct.
the present model though is really tough, because
Absolutely.
we're small and we don't have very large flat land where we can mechanize to the max and then compete on volume. But the old Hawaiian style ahopua system, basically what it was humans were no more important than other living things. So essentially what you're talking about is reciprocity,
Yeah.
between humans and everything else, as compared to transactionalism, which is,
Yeah.
you got $1, you pay so much, you expect change and power.
Yeah.
That's the end of the relationship. The old style of reciprocity actually has more meaning today for the future because we got to trade back and forth. We got to help each other. And along those lines, if farmers have multiple sources of income. So they're not big, let's say 10 acres, but they had several sources. So if they were doing bamboo, they drop them off and come back, tend to the other stuff. Maybe they're doing aquaculture. Maybe they're doing a number of different things. That would give them more resilience for the future. A model where you can show kids that this model can work. It doesn't have to be huge, but it can be successful. Because if you can actually do that, then the kids themselves will look at it. Because I don't really think the kids are just lazy and they don't want to do anything. I think they're not stupid. They look at it, oh man, I can lose money. Why should I do this? If the parents could show them that a multiple income stream system would work, then you start to thinking in terms of what can be more honorable than to feed your own people. I really like your administration,
Yeah.
because I've sat in at a meeting at PPAKL and I saw the whole staff over there. I think it was a Sunday. The attitude is really good, just like you're talking about, encouraging.
Yeah. Part of what drives us in our department, we talk about what is our core functions, right, in R&D department. And we've identified there's 4 of them, right? Because, government cannot do everything, but we know that we can do some things. And if we do them well, then we'll not only, serve us, but serve the public, which is what our job is. And the first thing is that we have to be the gatherers of data, right? So in our first cabinet meeting, the mayor said, hey, I'm a data guy. So I want to be the kind of decision maker that makes decisions based on data. So boom. One of the things we're going to launch out, and you're going to hear it in the next couple of days, is a massive island-wide survey that just talks about what's your feeling about the quality of life that you have on Hawaii Island. Now, the largest survey ever done statewide, all the islands, is 10,000 respondents. But we really feel, because we're Hawaii Island and the way that we're connected, that we can do 20,000 respondents. When I looked at how they calculate what is a viable amount of responses you have to validate our population, which is 207,000, I was surprised when it came back and said, oh, you only need 394 responses. I said, what? So 394 people going to speak for 200,000? No, cannot. We need at least 10%. I said, Kimo, we get 3,000 employees right here. Right? If everybody taking with 3,000, they go home, they get their family. Bro, we're already at 7,000. So we 1/3 of the way there. Because you can imagine what people could do with data like this, full-on organic data that was collected like on the ground, right? But first thing, right, we're the gatherers of data because data is important. The second thing is that we can convene, right? So when the mayor calls a meeting, he says, hey, I want all the stakeholders and workforce development to show up. Boom, they show up. So we can convene. But if we convene, we have to convene for action. So our second core function is convene for action. Call people together so they can act. I'm like you guys, probably don't want to sit in one more meeting where all we're going to talk about is the problem, right? We're going to talk about what's the solution. The third thing is we have to be the department that drives innovation. And sometimes innovation isn't coming up with one new idea. Sometimes innovation is trying to come up with one solution for one problem that has just flummoxed us for generations. Like, how are we going to figure this one out? I encourage my staff to do is look for a solution, and it doesn't have to be a high-tech one. Now, we got high-tech coming. So we have AI coming everywhere, and it's coming hard and fast. And so we have to drive that innovation. That's really clear. But sometimes, like I said, it's just really about trying to find a solution to an age-old problem. And then the last thing is that we have to be the carriers of culture. And a lot of things that Rich is referring to this morning, it's really about this is our culture. And in Hawaii, culture is behavioral, right? We're taught culture by how we behave, right? You don't talk while your uncle is talking. You don't take food until everybody get a chance to take, right? So it's behavior that's ingrained to us that is our culture. And culture primarily is the way in which we behave, right? And that behavior also goes out into the way we treat other people. So that's the thing that makes our culture special and unique, because it's behavioral. It's the way we act, right? You go fish, you come home, you get plenty of fish, you go to your neighbor like, hey, I caught fish, I give you some fish. That's a behavioral thing. That's something that was ingrained in us. That sense of rich culture, that has to be ingrained in everything that we do going forward, right? So when we make decisions, right, we're thinking about, okay, is that culturally appropriate? Is anybody going to come in the room and say, hey, that's not pono? So we have to think about that as in terms of how we make decisions, how we plan, how we go forward.
Oh, that's great.
That's super. Yeah. The bamboo thing came up because David Sands is a guy that does bamboo, and he has an operation in the Philippines. And what they do is they convert the bamboo to replace lumber.
Yeah.
So because we import all our lumber from outside using fossil fuels and stuff like that.
Yep.
And if we could do the same thing, but replace the lumber with bamboo, which can be grown here, everybody knows bamboo grows wild. I mean,
Oh yeah.
it's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah.
And then what you could do is you could use the marginal lands to grow the bamboo, not, just a small percentage, but on the marginal lands, which doesn't generate income now, but it could
Yeah.
be an income generator. So another thing that helps farmers make money, yeah?
So bamboo is really, really interesting commodity. And you're right. I mean, local people know bamboo grows nuts. And the primary use for bamboo is to make one fence on privacy, right? People put bamboo in because the thing can grow up to like 20 feet a year, right? And the thing about it is that, bamboo was terrific crop. Now, some of the ecological benefits of bamboo, it absorbs CO2 and releases I think it's like 30 or 35% more oxygen than equivalent trees. Some species of bamboo they can sequester up to, I think it was like 12 tons of carbon dioxide annually. So it's a huge thing ecologically. And then because we have a lot of water over here, but even on the west side with not that much water, it doesn't really require that much water. As a construction material, man, we're seeing it all over the place, right? You go to somebody's house, they get all that bamboo flooring now, right? I know that there's somebody over here, maybe it's your friend David Sands, that brings bamboo in from Philippines, Vietnam, but we could do something like that over here, right? If we could see that there's economic viability, right, for bamboo, that would be a great thing. If grown locally over here, it just helps us with that whole circular economy thing, right? Where we have bamboo, we can utilize it, can create income for somebody that's put back into our local economy here.
Yeah. We were talking to HPM, yeah,
Yeah.
and they like the idea of somebody processing the bamboo. So
Yeah.
now what we need to do is get a place where the processing can be done. Because I was mentioning that all you need to do is put it in the cylinder under pressure and heat,
Mm.
8 feet lengths. So a person could go out, harvest, pull a trailer, drop it off,
Yeah.
go back to farming. If we could have a centralized location, and I've got property that I'm willing to designate for that purpose. And there might be other people who would like to
Yeah.
just for that, what you're saying, so that we can consolidate and then help farmers make money at growing this crop, And like you say, it'll probably take outside money to help us. But if somebody could articulate the vision and what was going to be necessary, maybe somebody who lives here, there's a lot of money would say, that's a good idea because we need a catalyst to get it off the ground.
Yeah, the processing piece of it is much like the food part. We have growers, and I imagine we could be like this with bamboo, right? We have people that can grow it, and then we have end users that want to use it, but we need the processing in between, right? With food, right? We can grow the food, but the food has to be processed in a way that the end user can use it. The whole processing step, whether it's agriculture, whether it's food, whether it's bamboo, that's the key step, I think, that maybe we as government can help that. Typically takes a big investment. We do have a lot of land. We could do it. Somebody at the size of HPM would like to look at bamboo processing. Wow, there's a viable crop.
And are you familiar with Koala Farms and
Yeah.
Emily Evans folks? Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I've been
Know
talking
them
to
well.
her. Yeah, I've been talking to her because they consolidate, put things together, and then they send packages out of food. Yeah. When she comes back, which is
Mm.
going to be in a short time, we're going to have this big discussion about how can we do something at our place because we generate our own electricity. Yeah.
Yeah.
The idea being we need a place to do the consolidation and the processing. So hopefully we can work with her. And there's also Allison Blackheart and their group. Lot of interest. It's just a matter of now
Yeah.
trying to consolidate and get the scale necessary to get it off the ground. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is where I think, government could be helpful. We can often seed things, last year we put out these impact grants. I mean, they weren't huge, $25,000, but you could do a lot with $25,000. We awarded 31 nonprofits $25,000 to do various amounts of different projects. And we're good we can initiate things. We can even, in some cases, help things stand up things, projects or organizations or industries resources, but we're bad at long-term sustainability, because typically governments go in 4 and 8 year cycles. So they're not thinking 100 years. Although I really feel like this administration is going to be different because
Oh, yeah.
now, all of us in here, we're starting to think because we have kids and grandkids and great grandkids. So we're thinking more down the line. And I think if there's ever going to be any administration that's going to really work at trying to put infrastructure in for programs that could go for a long period of time, I think it could be us. So I'm really optimistic about it and really optimistic about a lot of the opportunity there is here. I mean, what I tell my staff here is our job is to create opportunities and resources so that our residents can take advantage of those. We have a lot of the natural resources already here on the island. So it's just a matter of, I guess, people's will and initiative and energy to make some of those things go. So I'm happy to be part of that. For sure.
Perfect.
Yeah.
This is very encouraging
Mhm.
because I see that happening with this county government. From the time you folks came in, now what you're expressing, this is the first time I've heard it so clear, what you're saying. And it just aligns perfectly with how I look at things. And it's not only me, that's what I live for, actually. And I don't
Yeah.
live for making money off this thing. I live for trying to figure out how we're going to get to the
Yeah.
future for
Yeah.
the next generations. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. This is great.
Yeah. Well, I think, having shows like this and putting this kind of information out to people, that's a super important piece of this, right? Because going back to us culturally, right? So much of the teaching was all mo'olelo, right? It was all stories, right? You tell stories. And, I remember that my family, my grandma didn't really speak English. She was real poor, pure Hawaiian, right? And her thing was always to kupu mau, right? To always be growing, always be thinking, always be learning. I think we're in a situation right now where we have the right people in place. We have the right resources kind of available. We have really creative minds kind of stepping forward, from all walks of life.
Yeah.
That we're very fortunate to have this collaboration of folks that are here on the island and that are arriving and that just say, hey, instead of coming in and saying, hey, this is how we need to do it, they come in and just say, hey, how can I kako? How can I be part of the solution to make this thing work? And as long as we stay of that mindset where it has to be beneficial for everybody, then I think we have a chance. I mean, while there's lots of reasons to be down and depressed, I mean, when you watch the news, there's lots of reasons to be upbeat and optimistic about what's ahead.
Thank you so much for joining us today. That was absolutely so interesting to hear what you are thinking about and the direction the county government is going right now.
Yeah.
I'm really glad that we got to get together and talk about all that. Thank you everyone for watching. We will be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Richard Haas Blog. Ahui ho.